Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Origins Podcast, where I connect you to outstanding humans and sustainable ideas. I'm your host, Scott Martin. Today we have the one and only Mark Rushmore. He's the founder of SURI toothbrushes, or a co-founder of it. He's somebody that's gone way back with me, with Tony Robbins. We met in 2018-19 and traveled the world together when we were on sort of a bit of a world tour, and really connected with him being his background in marketing and advertising. And he's gone off to build just a really surprising and exciting story in the sustainable space and products. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his story and his journey. So without further ado, let's paddle in. All right, here we are with another episode with the one and only Mark Rushmore. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Scott. Pleasure to be here.
So for those of you who don't know this man's name, you soon will. He's someone that goes way back. We met, I don't know, probably about 5 years ago. We spent a year traveling the globe together with Tony Robbins, and we're always connected really well because we had such a common background in the marketing industry to some degree. And then he left, and then he went off into the abyss, and he went and did a whole bunch of amazing things. And what he built was something that I really wanted to bring forward, is this business that I've been tracking. And I want you to, if you don't mind, share a little bit of the background, what led up to it, and then tell us a little bit about the company.
Sure. So my co-founder and I set up this company called SURI, which is short for Sustainable Rituals, and we make the world's most desirable and sustainable electric toothbrush. So I imagine you brush your teeth, Scott?
I do every day. Well,
Every day, right?
I try to.
Yeah, for sure. And so do lots of other people. In fact, over 50% of people in North America and in the UK and Germany and other developed markets use an electric brush because they're significantly better for you than using a manual brush. But what we discovered in our research was that every year over 4 billion toothbrushes, including electric ones, are thrown away and end up in landfill in our oceans, particularly pertinent if you're a surfer. And not only that, but although electric waste accounts for about 2% of landfill, it accounts for about 70% of the toxicity found in that landfill. So we knew that there's a significant problem there when it comes to toothbrushes. But what's more is that electric toothbrushes haven't meaningfully changed in decades. They are bulky as they were sort of 30 years ago. 99.9% of them are welded shut. So when the battery dies, you have to throw them away, which is both not economical or sustainable. And then lastly, often the battery life is really poor due to features that people just tell us they don't use. Do you use a Bluetooth app every day when you brush your teeth, Scott?
Nope.
No, you and no one else. But what you find is that you're having to charge your battery probably every few days or every week or so because of things that you're not using, like Bluetooth, flashing lights, 9 modes. So we redesigned a toothbrush from bottom up. So our brush is made from more sustainable materials. We offer free recycling with the heads. We have a tiny screw in the bottom of our brush so that when the battery dies, we can replace the battery. So this could be the last toothbrush you ever buy. What's more, it's about half the size of a traditional brush. We don't include Bluetooth. Instead, our battery lasts 40 days on a single charge, and we include a travel case which has a UV LED light, which kills 99.9% of bacteria on the bristles. So it's a brush that performs really well. It's clinically proven to give you as good a clean as the competitors from the world's leading research center. It's more sustainable, and also it's more desirable in terms of like how it looks and how it feels.
Wow, that was a great little rundown of the company and what the product does. So what made you decide to do a toothbrush? I mean, when you and I talked, I never even heard the word toothbrush. What happened? Like, give us a little journey into your background. Like, let's start with a little bit of your background. Your background has been in marketing advertising. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Sure. So the full story is after university, I joined this company called Procter and Gamble, which I think, particularly in North America, more people are familiar with. But it's the largest consumer product goods brand in the world. And I worked in a variety of sales and strategy and marketing roles, ultimately managing the Pringles brand, which was doing over 200 million pounds in sales in the UK when it was bought by Kellogg's. So I helped transition the business from P&G to Kellogg successfully. But as part of that arrangement of moving that business across, as a guy in my mid 20s, I was given this amazing opportunity where I basically earned 3 years' salary for 6 months' work. And so I started thinking, like, what am I going to do with that money, essentially? And at a similar time, an acquaintance of mine from university unfortunately committed suicide, and it just got me really thinking, like, do I want to wait until I retire to live out all my dreams, or with this money, should I try and do something different? So I wrote down a list of things I wanted to achieve. I wanted to do an adventure that would last a lifetime. I wanted to learn skills that I could teach my children. I wanted to do something that would normally take more than my entire annual holiday. So I became a ski instructor in Fernie, Canada, so I could teach my children. I then cycled unsupported from Canada to Mexico. And then I took part in a social media competition to sail around the world, and I won that competition. So I was meant to sail from China to San Francisco. And then ultimately, I want to set up my own company. And so I set up an experiential marketing agency. That agency was actually, I set up the UK office of a German agency. And I quickly scaled it to over £1 million in revenue in the first 6 months, which sounds really exciting, but actually really drove me to the point of burnout. And my girlfriend, now wife, almost left me because I ended up with like 14 people around my kitchen table. But I helped grow that business over 5 years, ultimately exiting it just before I joined Tony Robbins. And during that time, I worked with and won Oral-B as a client across Europe. So I learned a lot about what they did in the dental profession. So although that was a wild ride, honestly, like there were some real highs in that business and some really, really big lows. And so when I came to Tony Robbins, I was really looking to think about like, what do I want next in my life? Like, how do I want to be, not just in terms of business success, but as a person? And so, one of the exercises, as I'm sure you'll know, is to write down a list of things that you would like for your future. So I wrote down a whole list of things. I'd love to have a family with my wife. I would love to set up another company. I would love that company to have a huge potential market. So, something like toothbrushes where everyone brushes their teeth. I want the business to be able to at least get to £100 million in revenue. But most importantly, I want to do something that has an impact, something that I can be proud of. That I can tell my children that I, address like a significant problem, and that the growth of that company is tied in some way to some good, so that the more you grow the company, the more good you do. So I spent then another 18 months trying to work out what that company was. I ended up actually setting up a tequila brand with another plat, um, which was great, but it didn't meet some of the criteria which I'd spent, a year sort of planning and visualizing and working towards. And so when I came across the opportunity to create SURI with one of my former colleagues at Procter& Gamble, I looked at the market and thought, okay, this is a huge market. Everyone brushes their teeth. Everyone's familiar with it. There's two companies with over an 80% market share, which is very unusual. People are very apathetic towards those brands. They've become highly commoditized. People don't really love them. They haven't focused on consumer experience, or indeed, like, I don't think they've built up a groundswell of support. And so it just seemed like an obvious thing to do, especially when we could make it more sustainable and add a charitable element. That's how it kind of came to fruition. But there were some dark moments in between those 18 months where I thought, what am I going to do?
Hmm. And what's the charitable component? I didn't know that.
So we measure every part of our emission process, and so it's whether you call it charitable or not, but like we measure everything, then we take steps to reduce it in the supply chain, whether that's moving to like more efficient, greener modes of transport or different materials or different energy production. And then we invest in offsets, which is by no means like a perfect solution from a sustainability perspective, but it does mean that, a portion of our profits go towards clean water wells in Sierra Leone, removing plastic from the ocean with different partners. And so the more that we sort of grow, the more that we can contribute towards some of those projects.
Exciting. And I was really excited to see that you're a B corporation.
Yeah,
Tell me about
that's
the
been
journey of that. I think that a lot of people see that and they don't understand it. What is the impact? Just tell me a little bit about that for someone who doesn't even know what that is and why did you decide to do it?
So that was also on my dream list of things that I wrote when I was in my Tony Robbins year. And for those who don't know about it, basically, I think a lot of people, capitalism can have like both like good and bad sides of it. And I think there's, definitely been a wave of people who think, anything capitalism is bad. But it doesn't have to be like that. And the B Corporation is really saying that like business can be a force for good, both for profit, because ultimately it's only sustainable if you're profitable, but also for people and for planet. So making sure you have great policies for other people, as well as, from an environmental perspective. And the
Interesting.
journey on
And
it's
so
been great. I mean, it's a lot of work to get that
what's the
accreditation.
requirements to be that though? what's the
So
requirements?
there's a lot of different requirements. You go through a stringent testing process, and you have to provide documentation to show your policies towards people, towards your environmental impact, and there's a lot of in-depth third-party verified studies.
I was just asking, like, it's a pretty significant investment of time or money or both or what?
It's definitely a significant investment in time, to a certain extent, money because you need to employ people to do this, but also some of the reports that you need. So we needed to have measured all of our emission, which was a time-consuming process, and we worked with a third party in order to do that. Um, but fortunately, we found an enthusiastic Cambridge-educated graduate who was looking to make an impact, and he helped lead that project for us.
Beautiful. So what's next for Mark Rushmore? Like, what are you? What's so your business is now off the ground. I've got this beautiful, brand. I'm seeing you getting awards. I'm seeing you got some exciting news. I keep seeing on your LinkedIn. That's what kind of prompted me to pick up the phone and call you. But like, what do you see as really next? Like within this brand and yourself, and just frankly, like just in your journey of what you're doing, how do you see what you've been doing shaping or reshaping the category that you're in?
It's a great question. So we've had this phenomenal run. We started shipping in May last year, and now we're doing well over $1 million a month in revenue across our direct to consumer, Amazon, and retail businesses. And we expect that to double or triple in the coming 12 months. So, you know, really kind of like growing a team, maintaining the culture, ensuring that we have enough money for stock are some of the key challenges that we have. I think in terms of the category, definitely people are seeing that there's, consumers want a product which has a great unboxing experience, which is more sustainable, which focuses on consumer-led insights. So like having a long battery is more important than having a Bluetooth app. And I think the consumers who write reviews for us, and we're the most highly rated electric toothbrush on Trustpilot. I think those reviews come from the fact that we've put in a lot of care and attention into the whole experience and to service the customer afterwards as well. And I think that's the way it should be, and it's what consumers expect nowadays. But I think in terms of category, what we're seeing is we're quickly growing our category share on different platforms like Amazon, and we just were listed in the largest retailer of electric brushes in the UK called Boots. So I'm not sure when this podcast will be coming out, but there's an exciting Hollywood actress who has a store, will be featured in their gift guide this Christmas. And there's a lot of North American retailers who are very interested in stocking us. And so, the next few years hopefully look like we can hopefully grow to become a globally recognized brand that people love because of our design, sustainability, and performance.
Beautiful. It's like, so you've got a background. You've been working in, you'd had an agency before, just like I did. Both had the similar experience of burnout from it. Now, a lot of people that I interview and I talk with are usually like, authors and they have service businesses, but you're probably the first one that has a product business. Tell me what's been the biggest surprise or challenge or insights you can share about crossing the chasm from what being sort of a service business and going into what I see as a heavy capital, like high capitalization requirements to get started in a product business. What are some of the insights and things you've learned from this process that you would have
It's a
like
great
maybe
question.
didn't know before? Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is almost quite a unique journey. So I'm not sure if this is true of all B2C experiences, but I felt like as an agency owner and runner, it's like for me, you're constantly trying to win new business, and the sales process of winning, big B2B clients can be much longer. And to a certain extent, the growth was linear. We'd win, BMW as a client, and then we'd have to hire a proportionate number of people, and so it was fairly linear in terms of growth and sort of margins. Whereas with a product business, we've scaled it to like every month is growing so much more quickly, and we're really seeing this sort of exponential type curve to our growth because to a certain extent you can have that with a product in a way that you can't necessarily with an agency, or certainly the type of agency I ran. And so we're only a team of 12 people, and we're aiming to do more than $1 million per head in revenue, and actually exceed that sort of. And so that sort of gives you some idea as to maybe the difference. Other, I guess it depends what kind of agency you ran. So that's one thing that's true. But the other difference is before, I had 10 core clients, and now we have over 100,000 customers. And so actually how you nurture that community, how you communicate with them, how you really kind of show them that attention, which is what we try to do in our agency, is kind of a core component of what we're looking to do, because ultimately, it's our customers who support the mission, the product, the journey, who will be our sort of longest term advocates.
So this is a direct to consumer product.
Predominantly.
Okay. So that with direct to consumer product that you have these customer relationships, are you able to grow through building, are you building a community, like you mentioned community, but do you actually have like a community, or how does that show up? Like how are you interacting with the customers other than just point of sale, email response, get back to us if you want to buy another product? Like are you doing something different?
That's a great question, Scott, and one of the many reasons I need to keep talking to you and I consume your content, because I think we could be doing a much better job than what we are doing currently. But there's different elements to like how we to work with the community. So one is on just responding on customer service. If someone has an issue or has a question,
Hmm.
like we've really heavily over invested there versus our competitors, and you'll get a response from us really quickly. And often people give us our 5-star ratings because of that level of service. I took a lot of inspiration from the way Zappos tried to ensure that any customer who communicates with them has a great experience. We're not perfect, far from it, but we certainly try our hardest on that. So that's one element of community building. We then have more useful content. So people who are in our email flow, yes, we do provide offers, but we also provide insights on things like sustainable living, on optimal dental techniques from dental professionals. And so we're trying to provide like a little bit more information there. And then also through things like our partnerships. So we've just done a partnership with Wired magazine, which I think is big in the US as well as
Oh
here.
yeah, huge. Yeah.
And what's great is we have done a sort of long-term partnership with them, where they run events with great speakers on really interesting topics, whether it's impact or energy, and all their speakers are given a SURI toothbrush, and we get to sort of engage at those events. But off the back of that, for example, we just had this man called Andy Baines, who you may or may not know, used to report directly into Steve Jobs and then into Tim Cook, and he helped on the hardware side from an environmental perspective on all the development of Apple. He then left Apple to create this company called Nest, which he sold
Oh
to
yeah.
Google for $3 billion. And so he was in our office last week, and he's a huge hardware fan, and obviously an environmental fan as well. And so it's great to be able to you know have those partnerships, but also then with our community, we're able to invite people to those events and kind of get them involved at like a top level.
Yeah, that's cool. Man, it's like this, I can see how this you could even expand your product offering, and you could be tucked into so many different sustainable communities of people. There's a big shift. Like I think the timing of what you've done is really brilliant because there's always been a need for purpose. You look at Patagonia, different brands have been around, but they were kind of on the leading edge. And I've seen this shift over the last 5 years of in an exponential way of purpose driven businesses. People wanting to spend money, they'll pay more money. In fact, they'll wait longer and do go over obstacles to support their purpose. And I'm curious what sort of like responses you've had. Is there any sort of like customer response you're like, wow, I didn't even know that had an impact on them or something like that? Or what has been sort of maybe it's even industry wide, like what's sort of been the response to this toothbrush being sustainable? I would have never thought of that. That's what's so it's just such a fucking
So
it's just thrown me off. Like it's just so funny. Like it's awesome, but it's like a hanger. It's like, of course, it's like everybody uses it every day.
So here's the thing, like we believe like sustainability shouldn't come with any compromise. It shouldn't cost any more. It shouldn't mean that like there's less like good design or less great features. And so while like we've made our product, way more sustainable than any competitor that we're aware of in the category, that doesn't come at the compromise of anything else. And I think for us, that's really the core. Tesla doesn't necessarily talk about how it's so much greener than other cars, but what they do talk about is, how fast the car goes, the cool sort of engagement with like the extra large screen in the middle and the software updates, and really just focus on like the things that really people care about. Like what does it look like, how does it feel? And so we took a lot of inspiration from that in terms of, we want to surprise and delight people with every element. So from the unboxing to the fast delivery to the feel of the product, it's made from aluminium. It's really smooth. It just looks so much more design led, like other parts of your life, like your phone, like your car, like your cosmetics, etc. And so I think what you see in our reviews, and if you ask me what I was most proud about, aside from like the impact we're making, it's definitely our customer reviews. We have over 3,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot, and it's in those responses you see people go, you know, I hate my X toothbrush. It always breaks. It's always got that gunk on the bottom. The battery always dies. And like I feel so bad about throwing it away. I've got 10 of them left in my drawer that I just can't pull myself to throw away, because I know it's going to end up in landfill. And I think, people then write, I don't, you know, I've always thought brushing my teeth was a chore. I now love it. I'm looking forward to brushing my teeth. Never thought I'd say that. And I think it's actually that difference in expectations. People have such low expectations in this category because it's like a chore that you have to do. And by flipping that sort of like low expectation with like, a delightful experience, that contrast between, you know, um, something that was a chore into a joy, that crossing that is what is like the magic of our brand.
Well, that's cool innovation. It's like you understated it. I would have led with that, frankly, because your branding and marketing. I mean, most people that are sustainable businesses, they hang on to like, oh yeah, we're sustainable, and so where you're kind of going. It's the surprise of it. That the reality is we're fat, forward with the fashion, the design, the innovation of it, which I think is totally forward thinking. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, if people want to do both, people will step over things that have less quality. But if you can do both, I mean, now it's like setting a new bar. It's like a new standard. And I think that's what we're seeing in a lot of products that are coming forward. Is there's this new thinking, and do you see yourself as innovating with some other products as well? Like, are you continue on this journey?
Oh, definitely. We have some, quite frankly, in my opinion, like our next product innovation, if it works, like I think it can, I think it could be multiples bigger than this. It's a format change in a huge industry, which redefines like how people will think of this product. I can't reveal it unfortunately right now, but I'd love to come
That's
back
fine.
on and talk another time when I can. But you talked about setting a new standard. That's exactly what to do. Create raving fans. That's exactly what you want to do. And as you know, like those are some of the things that we learned on that Tony Robbins year. It's kind of like some of the kind of business fundamentals, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm still so involved with Tony Robbins. How has that affected you? Like, if you look back at that year of how has that affected your thinking, your mindset, your commitment to this direction?
So there's two answers to that. When I was like in my year, I was definitely full on 100% sold in, bought in. I'm like telling everyone about it, and
Hmm.
very much like in the hype. I think then I kind of came out and I felt a little bit like, oh, wait a second, maybe I can't maintain this, and was it really worth it? Kind of question mark. But then actually what I've really seen is that like a lot of it maybe sunk in, and like it was kind of held like sort of deep within me, some of the core lessons. And whether it's setting new standard, creating raving fans, like getting in to a certain state to deal with certain issues, and knowing when to flex between different states, um, has really been crucial to absolutely everything I do. And having that you know routine where you're sort of thinking about your results and how you want to achieve them, through to having an amazing community of people like yourself, Scott, who continue to inspire me and raise my standards to kind of live a better life. I think it's been absolutely fundamental.
Cool, and I'm the same way. I'm just like I love it so much, but it's like it's in me. It's almost become second nature in a lot of ways, and but you also having removed yourself and kind of like now immersing into this, do you have like do you find that you've now adapted, you've created your own sort of a methodology for innovation? Like for example, you got this new product that you're coming out with. Was it led by a market need? Was it led because of an open market? Like, what was the? Because sometimes we're meeting demand or we're creating demand, and if you look at those two things, what were you doing? And without revealing the product, and just sort of like break us down to your what's your process
Sure.
for making a decision? Because that's a fundamental, major commitment of time and capital to move in a direction. You got to have a level of certainty. So what's kind of how like walk us through? If I'm inside your brain, how did you get there?
So there's two things to it, and it kind of what the first part of the answer refers back to what you asked me before, the difference between an agency and like this kind of product. Before I felt like I was pushing a rock up a hill constantly trying to like persuade people why they needed to use my agency, constantly, like trying to get work and share of that work and maintain it. Whereas this feels like pushing a rock or a boulder down a hill. It's like there's a big problem that a lot of people have. We found the problem to it, and now the momentum is there. So I really just want to continue to work in businesses that feel more like that. That's one of my driving forces, without a doubt. And so any innovation that we come out with needs to kind of be true to our core three principles, which are performance, design, and sustainability. It has to be as good at performing its function as any of the competitors or better. It has to have human centric design, the way it feels, the way it looks, the way it performs, like how long it lasts, etc. And then lastly, it needs to be significantly more sustainable than other options out there. So what we then do is like look at the categories. Okay, is there a category here which is large, which everyone uses? Is there a way, is it sustainable, or are there sustainable options? Do those sustainable options compromise, yes or no? If they do, then okay, wow, there's a big opportunity to innovate on innovation, on sustainability. Then we look at design. Is there any issues with the design in the products that exist on the market? Could they look nicer? Could they, be better for traveling? Could they be more compact, etc.? And then lastly, you know, how do we make it perform as well? Do you know what I mean? Like it can't come at a compromise. You don't want to use a product which has a compromise on that front. And so by finding a large market with problems that we can solve through our core three areas, that's how we find out what we're going to innovate with. And hopefully if we get that right, then we can push a rock down a hill.
Beauty. So step one, you've that's how you process for finding the innovation. Now the next two steps are probably things that people really get lost on, which is, hey, how did you fund this stuff? Like, did you get partners? Did you pull it out of your own pocket? Were you scrappy? Did you get investors? Like whatever. And then how do you operationalize it? Because there's so many people who go, I've got these ideas, but there's a huge chasm between I've done that work. I've got a couple ideas even myself, and I'm like, oh man, like what do I got to do to kind of capitalize this? What's been your process or experience?
Yeah. So on the second part of what, like, how do you get from the idea into, actually maybe on the first part on funding, because that's the most important one. We knew that we want to create a really fast growth company and get it to as many people as possible. There's also heavy costs involved with like tooling, manufacturing, prototyping, etc. So we knew this business wasn't going to be bootstrapped. So we got investments. We've done 2 rounds of investment from a series of angel investors and venture capitalists. And what we found is as we've progressed and got more and more traction, more and more venture capitalists from around the world are interested in the business. So actually, we're about to, as of tomorrow, start raising our Series A, which will help us to continue our growth. So that's on the first part. And on the second part, how do you do it? It really is just a matter of doing it. And that's like what I've found is that 99% of people will not just take the first step, which is as simple as going on to Alibaba.com and saying, electric toothbrush manufacturers, and then, emailing however many you want with your sort of ideas. Obviously you need to like look at materials and costs. We actually spoke to 25 factories. 24 of whom just laughed down the phone at us when we said we wanted to create something bespoke. They said, no, you should take, one of our existing models, because they're all about efficiency. They don't want to take risks.
Mhm.
And so we had to persuade them, the 25th one who finally said, yes, it can be done with these, groundbreaking materials. So we use cornstarch in the head, castor oil in the bristles. No one has done that before. No one had made a modular design. And so it is very unique. It's very difficult to do what we've done, but that also helps us create a moat. So my advice to anyone would be just take the first three steps. It doesn't commit you for life. I think, again, it's a Tony Robbins thing, but a lot of people will stop doing something because of fear. So you have to kind of get yourself into like the state of certainty and say, like, you know what, what's the smallest step I can do? And it's probably Googling it on Alibaba. Can I buy it already? Can I identify three factories that could potentially do it? Can I cold email three factories and kind of just go from there? And it's just really taking those like little baby steps. Is, if you want to climb Mount Everest, the way you start is by taking your first step. And although it's a cliche, it's a cliche for a reason. You don't just like hop to halfway.
And what about the investment? Like how did you go about identifying and actually pitching and just like the whole process of getting your first round of angel investors? I think that's like a real for a lot of people. It's just like they don't even know where to begin with that. I have some experience in it, but I'm curious what your journey's been.
So different people have different experiences. I absolutely love this. I love people, Scott. Like I really love people and I love listening to different people's ideas. So some people hate rejection. I love rejection. I love finding out, okay, why doesn't it work for you? What do you think? Okay. And then it helps me to like refine, how we approach it. But, we were pretty fortunate. My co-founder and I have a background in the industry. We both worked at Procter and Gamble. We've both worked in fast-moving consumer goods, in marketing, finance, sales, and strategy. So we have a good pedigree background. Beyond that, one of my clients was Oral B, and my partner ran several e-commerce companies successfully, so knows how to use Shopify and Meta and Google ad spend, and to a certain extent build a social following. And so I think a lot of investors, okay, do we believe that these people have the right background, skills, etc., to do the job? And obviously you got to play that up as much as possible. But I think that was a cool part of it. I think then, is it a big addressable market? Is there a significant problem? And do these guys have a solution to that? And I think for us, a lot of people brush their teeth. There's two companies with over an 80% market share. Is there a significant problem? Do a lot of people not use Bluetooth, have poor batteries, you know, care about the sustainability? Absolutely. It kind of sounds a bit cliched, find a big problem, solve it. But that's very much at the core. So I think between the problem, solution, and the team, that was enough to get us our initial investment. But then from there, we said, we will grow to this many sales within our first year. We probably 4 or 5x'd that. And so when we came to our next round of investment, we said, look, this is what we said we'd do in a year, and we surpassed all those targets very clearly, and we'd laid them out the year before. And I think that's something actually that we really has really helped us is that a lot of investors, like the majority, rejected us in our first funding round, but we had really great relationships. They wished us luck, and then we kept in touch with them over the next 12 months, so that they saw like, oh wow, those guys said they were going to do it, and they really did do it. So when it came to the second round of funding, we had, I think, five offers from VCs. We only had space to take one. And so it's kind of continued on that track, and that's kind of what we always want to do is lay out what our vision is, over exceed expectations against those targets, and yeah, hopefully build a brand that people love.
Dude, that was highly valuable. I mean, if I think about what you just said there, most people that whether it's sales or business and especially investors, if they get rejected, it sounds like you're asking why. So you're getting
Mm,
the gold from them, am I right? That's what you're saying. And then
for sure.
two, the genius here is that you followed up with them. Most people would never do that. That actually is like you're that's so forward thinking. So was that a strategy you guys deployed? Were you doing it just because like what was the thinking? Like was that actually a plan or was that just sort of a just the way you are? I mean,
Honestly, I just love people, and I love clever people with interesting perspectives.
mhm.
Hey, look, I'm not going to say I kept in touch with absolutely everyone. There are some people who I thought, actually, you're not the kind of person who I want to go into business with, because it is a two-way thing. It's not just like, oh, I'll take any money. Um, and so but yeah, but certainly like along the journey, I've had so many people who've offered, really useful insights or a different perspective, or got me to think about things in, a different way. And even if I disagreed, like I really value that. And I love people, like ultimately, a lot of these people are really interesting, see lots of companies, have really great insights. And so, I like to think that business is one part of my life, but how you make people feel is what they remember. And likewise, just you never know who you're going to bump into in the future, so I like to try and maintain relationships where possible.
Totally. I mean, it's like I feel like that's how you and I've stayed in touch. Whenever someone makes an impression, they're really intelligent, clever, and I feel like I can hang out with them. I don't even know where it's going to go. I just go, I'm just going to stay in touch. That's
Yeah,
that's like I've been, and that's to me is like with no judgment or like like there's some benefit or something.
yeah,
And it always works out. It's like I look at the series that I'm doing, former Platt. She's Miss Hawaii National Geographic Explorer. I've been staying in touch with her since doing clubhouses, and now we're doing a project together. We're launching something that's like going to be fantastic. And I'm like, she's world renowned, and I'm like, it's only because we just maintained contact. Like Susan Casey, who just wrote I just did a podcast with her. I literally just launched that. I mean, I would had to be tenacious to get her to write a blurb, to get to read my book, to get her on my pod. That took years, but it was like she was worth it because she's so cool. Like I don't know if you got to listen to that episode, but like, oh my gosh, like her
yeah.
storytelling is just incredible. And I think that that's one thing I like about you is you're just such a likable guy. It doesn't surprise me to see the success. I can totally see, you know, unbelievable future for you. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, you've been kind enough to read my book is what do you see like when you've read my book Groundswell and you look at the stuff that you're doing, where do you see the intersection of that book? Because I really wrote it for impact creators, um, but I didn't really, I mean, to me it was like the vision of like people making an impact, making a difference in the world and creating momentum and growth and with an audience. But I can see like even your direct to consumer, there's another sort of like thought I never really, thought about, which was the groundswell, maybe not necessarily building an audience, but building I guess you could say, product sales, if you will. Like, I just didn't really kind of address it that clearly, but I'm just curious what you got from it and what's sort of your vision of this intersection, if at all.
100%. So, I mean, firstly, thank you so much for all your kind words. I couldn't speak more highly of you. You're just one of those people who, from the first time we met, it's just you just know you just want to keep in touch, and like, whether we stay in like close contact or speak every now and then, I just kind of feel super grateful, genuinely, to have you in my life and to be able to like
Oh,
engage with
thanks.
you in different formats. So yeah, absolutely. Then in terms of, I think this whole ethos around Groundswell and like you know what I mean, rather than like just really heavily trading people, but instead like creating value for for people so that it's sustainable. It just feels true. It just feels like authentic and real, and like if you can build that successfully, then you're like it's obvious, it's like the right path. I think with us, honestly, like I think we're a bit of a hybrid because we we spend heavily on ads, right? So like in terms of the performance marketing, and I know you talk a little bit about how hey, that can be quite short term. For us, it's like, how do you get that balance between fast growth, performance marketing, as well as building a groundswell, as well as building like loyal brand fans, and like is there a combination of the two that you can do? And for me, that's kind of the route that we're employing. So we try and employ like a little bit of both tactics. Yes, we do a lot of performance marketing, but we also want to build that like that brand loyalty, and like over 15% of our sales are from referral. And then additionally, like our existing customers are repeat purchasing for their family, for their children, for their parents, for their siblings, for their best friends, because they love that product so much that you know they want to do it. And because they've been looked after so well by customer service, they know, like, okay, if I give this product to someone, I know they're going to have a great experience. It's going to bring joy to their life. In fact, I don't know if this directly relates. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like one thing again is a little bit from Tony Robbins, but also from this idea of like building an audience. I try and, one of the pleasures of my job is being able to like gift people occasionally a brush just because. And so an example was I saw this guy who was laid off from Twitter, who, or I guess now X, but he was the head of their social media strategy, I think, either globally or he's really senior. And he wrote this post that went viral on LinkedIn saying, it was his dream job and he dedicated so much of his life and didn't know what he was going to do. And he was quite scared. He was about to have a child. And so, he got thousands of comments. And I just DM'd him really naively just to say, hey, look, you know, I was made redundant from Kellogg's after the Pringles transition. And at the time, it felt really scary. And, there was a lot of different emotions. But ultimately, it led me on this beautiful path, which has, led to many adventures and setting up businesses. And ultimately, it's been the thing. And, I hope it was the same for him. And, by the way, I set up this small company. We'd love to pay you to be a consultant. We can't afford your sort of salary. Um, and if nothing else, I'd like to just give you a free toothbrush and, I think it might give you a little bit of joy. Anyway, he's sort of politely refused, and I said, no, please, like it's the joy. I get to give it to you. He accepted it, and I didn't hear from him for like a year. And then I think last week or the week before, he just wrote the most generous, beautiful post on LinkedIn saying, in the depths of my job loss and slight anxiety about the future, the last thing I wanted was a free toothbrush. I didn't know why this guy gave it to me, so I didn't open it for months. But then, I did open it and I love it. And it, for me, it's like the Apple toothbrushes. But he said every day it gives him the reminder twice a day when he wakes up and when he goes to sleep about the kindness of strangers and that there are people out there who will just do something for you for no other good reason than they just want to help you. And that for me, like, he posts that, he tells all his family about it, and we have these people who buy into what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. And hopefully if we can do that with a bit of performance marketing, then tell me if this captures, but for me that captures some of the essence of what I took from your book.
Yeah, it's funny. What I didn't put in the book is the hybrid, and my answer for that is, because of course, everybody knows me as being somewhat anti-advertising. It's not that I'm anti-advertising. It's like you need to do it on the fundamentals first, and do it. And I probably I'm going to write like an article, but it's like it'd be some headline like this: is every sailboat has a motorboat on it. you know,
That's
you know,
it.
it's and it's and that's it. It's like it's the only reason I'm so hard hitting on that is because if I give too much wiggle room, then it goes into that direction. So I feel like I got to be so focused on get this stuff done first, then add to it. But I feel like there's room for that discussion because I'm seriously not opposed to it. In fact, it's great for testing. It's priming the pump, if you will. There's like when you're sailing, there's low times. Sometimes you're coming to harbor, you got to get out to get where the wind is, whatever it is. It's a
Exactly.
useful tool, and that's the way I would look at it.
That's exactly it. Like we're just trying to find the best wind. We want to get there quickly. And yeah, and then, hoist
And
those
then
sails
sometimes
and sail into the sunset.
yeah, and sometimes it's like you got the wind, and you have the wind, and you want to like get going because you want to take advantage of the moment. So, it's like it really there is no I
It's more
think
efficient on your motor
it's more efficient on your motor. Yeah,
if you have the sail and the motor at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I view that a little bit like say like if you look at the long and the short of it, the research that I published and that I shared within my book, and there's the research around branding versus sales activation. That's kind of how I view
Hmm.
sales activation tends to be a little bit with a different energy, and sometimes you could just attach paid to it, and that's kind of how I view that. Is they need to work harmoniously. No good brands are doing strictly all brand only. I mean, only the ones that have been around for like maybe 1,000 years, like Tide or something. But even then, they're still doing sales activation and coupons and things of that nature. So, but yeah, I know it's like I'm glad we brought that up because a lot of people do think I'm so harsh on the advertising, but that is my stance. Is every sailboat's got a motor? You know, um,
Yeah.
it's both.
But I think what you don't want to have is just a motorboat. I think that's
Correct.
dangerous.
It is very dangerous. And the story you just gave is like the second principle: give is the new get. It's like, it's not new, but it's like the idea of, that's just your nature, right? It's like building relationships and bridges, and sometimes, you just like we overlook these. We see these moments, and that person remembered how you made them feel in the moment that they needed to feel it the most. And your toothbrush represents an entire. It's a hope. It's like it's a story. Like that's what's beautiful about your story is that you've created something out of nothing. You're making, and you're a creator of impact. You're making something of impact in the world, which is all the things that you could have done. You could have probably found a much shorter path by making a toothbrush, a better toothbrush, but you wanted to make it something of impact. And, and I guess the question I ask you is because this is what people say to themselves, is it worth it?
I mean, yes, yes, I would say.
Yeah.
I think the
But on what level is it worth it though? That is the thing, right? Like that's what people, it's what I think people want is that, but they don't want to do, they don't, they're like, we have, but it's like, this is going to be faster. And I feel you when I'm hearing about your impact that it's like, no, it's deeper than this.
you know what? I think the other thing that maybe I took away from my time at Tony Robbins, but also just, in light of my last business where I worked so hard and gave everything really for an outcome, not for the journey, but it was very much like, what's the outcome going to be? It's like actually the quality of your life is really the quality of your emotions, to borrow a phrase from a well-known man that we've mentioned a few times. But it really is like how you spend each minute, hour, day, week, month. That is the quality of your life, because the only thing we all have is time, and it's how you spend that time that is going to determine your experience of life. It's not like when you make $10 million, then you're going to have a good life. It's like the years preceding you getting that big exit. And I met plenty of people. I mean, it's a well known cliche, like the most miserable people are the ones who just sold their companies and made lots of money and find out, oh, this wasn't the whole point all along, and I've just wasted 20 years. Um, there's several plats I know who made tens of millions of dollars and then lost it all in cryptocurrency, and kind of re-examine, like, well, what's important to me? And I think for me, like, to be able to do something that I care about, that enables me to give to people, that enables me to employ people, that has a more positive impact on the world, that I can be proud to talk to my children about, that gives me a variety of purpose. Like it does act as a driver in those harder moments, and it kind of makes me realize, like, yeah, this is how I want to spend my time. And the more that I can spend my time doing things I love and giving me positive emotions, the better.
Yeah. I mean, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure, right?
Right.
To quote our Tony Robbins buddy. And, I think I think what more people are searching for fulfillment than ever before, and they're just not sure how to get there. And I think with your story, you're giving it's an incredible story of hope. It's like it's just, and it's like it's going to continue to rise, and I think you're going to inspire so many impact creators. Who are a lot of people listen to my audience that are they're dreaming of making something of impact, or maybe they are, but the impact that they're making isn't doing enough for them. It's not big enough for them. And I think that your story is like such a big story, and it's just begun. I think we'll look back at this podcast and go, man, I was lucky to get your attention in time. This is one of those podcasts, and in the future, I'll be hoping I can get your number because you're going to
You've got my
explode. I
number.
see it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
thank you very much. It's funny though, like, yes, like since we started shipping, we're now at almost double digit $1 million revenue, which is fantastic. But I can tell you honestly, like, that's nice, and like, it makes me feel quite good. But what makes me feel great, genuinely great, is like when consumers write back telling us, like, how they're brushing their teeth more often, or they really love it, or we've done something kind and they just really value it. That actually makes me feel so much better, and it makes me realize, like, you don't need to have $1 million producing company in order to do that. You can just be kind to people, be generous, give your time. Like it really, that fulfillment side for me, I think I'm really doubling down on the other things that give me fulfillment outside of just economic success, if that makes sense. And I think
It makes
that's
a ton of sense.
achievable, like, now, no matter what you do.
And one of my last questions is, what's a groundswell to you? When you hear groundswell and you've read my book, what does that mean to you?
If I hear the word groundswell, I just think Scott Martin. So that's the first thing that I think. Um, but a groundswell for me, it's something. It's it for me. It conveys depth. it conveys, it's not the superficial, it's like the deep down. It's like it's not the superficial. It's like almost like the truth. It's like that deep truth coming through. It's natural, it's unstoppable, it's long lasting, and it's authentic. And those are the words for me that I associate with Groundswell.
Thank you. And I think that this is exactly what you're creating for yourself. Couldn't be any happier to have you on the podcast. I just am so happy that we got to pull this together. Where can people find you and buy your toothbrush and support your groundswell?
Thank you. Yeah, sure. So people can buy it from our website, www.trysuri.com. We ship globally. We ship very quickly within North America. You can also follow us on Instagram at Discover Suri. Or if you want, I'm intrigued, like email me, mark at trysuri.com, and I will give you a special discount code, which I'll only reveal when you email me. So let's see how many people do that.
Beautiful. Right on. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We're so stoked to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. It's been a real honor, genuinely.
Likewise. All right, everyone. Well, that's another episode of the Groundswell Origins Podcast. As usual, just go to groundswell.fm and drop me a voicemail. Just click on the mic and leave me a little message, or email me, scott@groundswellorigins.com. Jump in the community, groundswellinnercircle.com, and join the conversation. Until next time, mahalo.